Every December at Engadget, between sips of spiked holiday beverages, we look back on the year and recall the best and worst developments in tech. Maybe we're cynical, but in recent years, the list of losers just keeps getting longer, while it's harder to find true winners to write about. But in 2022, there were bright spots that brought light to a gloomy, chaotic 12 months. From beautifully simple word games to enchanting pictures from space, there were just enough distractions this year to balance out the never-ending drama from Twitter, Meta, Amazon, and the like. These are the Engadget team's favorite things from 2022. In 2022, things on Earth were so bad that we welcomed the opportunity to look at what's beyond our galaxy. After its launch on Christmas last year, the James Webb Space Telescope deployed its sun shield in January, finished calibration a few months later, and started sending back images. On July 11th, President Biden revealed the space agency's first picture to the public, saying it was the sharpest and deepest image of the distant universe to date. More photos were then released on July 12th, and throughout the rest of the year, we saw more and more of deep space through the JWST. The colorized pictures made for stunning wallpapers, but also brought us tantalizing information about distant galaxies. NASA also scored a reassuring win with its Double Asteroid Redirection Test Project, or DART, this year, when it managed to crash its spacecraft into an asteroid, changing its course. This success has been billed as a watershed moment for planetary defense by NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, adding that the agency has proven it is serious as a defender of the planet. Step aside, I guess, Avengers. The fact that DART was able to knock an asteroid off its course showed that it could work to save the Earth if a space rock were headed for our world and was small enough and detected in time. It's nice to have some hope for humanity in that specific situation as we continue to be dazzled by everything we learn about the vast expanse of space we float in. Wordle. For a while in 2022, a word game brought the whole world together. Because it's the same puzzle for every single player each day, Wordle was a giant inside joke amongst solvers across international boundaries. At Engadget, for example, London-based Matt Smith could give me hints or laugh at my inability to guess a word he had gotten earlier in the day. I also loved sharing and seeing the little blocks that showed how many tries it took us to solve the word. It was a chance to both bond and brag, making it the perfect gaming experience. Plus, whenever a word was controversial, whether it was spelled in US or UK English, for example, I loved the inevitable debate that would result. In 2022, Wordle gave us an elevated form of water cooler conversation fodder, but for the entire world, not just your office. Although it technically launched in 2021, Wordle found widespread popularity in 2022 and got bought by the New York Times this year. It was born from software engineer Josh Wardle's desire to make a word game for him and his partner to play together. But it was when the user base expanded beyond his family to encompass the entire globe that Wordle took on a life of its own. Thanks to Wordle, we all may be leaving 2022 a little bit savvier about the most common letters and words in the English language. UK Bureau Chief Matt Smith's favorite gadget of the year is the Pixel 6a. When friends and family ask him which phone they should buy, he always tells them to get the latest Pixel A series. Last year was the Pixel 5a, and now has been supplanted by the even more premium looking Pixel 6a. Now the new design is glossy with a distinctive camera bar that arrived on the flagship Pixel 6 phones last year, ensuring that the 6a looks different from all other smartphones. This year though, the A series also has Google's homemade Tensor chip, which was built to help with AI and image processing. Our favorite thing about the Pixel 6a though is that like its predecessors, it has an incredibly capable camera for the price. The phone also includes Google tricks like Face Unblur to salvage dodgy photos and Magic Eraser for scrubbing out any unwanted elements. With a 6.1-inch display compared to the 6.34-inch screen on last year's A-series Pixel, the 6a might be the best option for those looking for a more pocketable Android. The Steam Deck isn't the first handheld computer, and it certainly won't be the last. However, by combining the convenience of the Nintendo Switch with the flexibility of a PC and a huge library of supported games, Valve has almost single-handedly reinvigorated the market for portable PC gaming. And with a starting price of just $400, the Steam Deck also costs hundreds less compared to rivals from Ioneo, GPD, and more. Granted, the Steam Deck isn't perfect. It's rather bulky as far as handhelds go, and Valve's Linux-based SteamOS often requires a bit of tinkering with to optimize a game's performance. Its high-pitched fan could stand to be a little bit less distracting too. But thanks to its clever touchpads and general customizability, the Steam Deck makes it easier to play traditional keyboard and mouse games while on the go than pretty much anything else out there. For people who loves Nintendo's games, the Switch is great, but for everyone else, the Steam Deck might be the best multi-purpose gaming handheld you can buy right now. I'll admit it, this one's personal. As a reporter covering smartwatches, I've been holding my breath for this year's highly anticipated trio of smartwatches from Apple, Samsung, and Google. The first two were expected to unveil souped-up pro models of their flagship watches, while Google was set to launch its first homemade smartwatch featuring Fitbit integrations. But between the blandness of Samsung's Galaxy Watch 5 Pro and the overall letdown of the Pixel Watch, there just wasn't a lot of competition for Apple's Watch Ultra. But the company didn't just coast on the mediocrity of the Android smartwatch market. The Watch Ultra features a 49mm screen in a highly durable case that doesn't feel excessively huge unless you're a fellow petite-wristed person like me. Apple made a selection of carefully crafted straps that are eye-catching, comfortable, and easy to maneuver with gloves. The Watch Ultra also boasts a depth gauge for divers, dual-frequency GPS for more accurate distance tracking, an emergency siren, and impressive 4-day battery life. All that is on top of other Apple Watch features like comprehensive health and fitness tracking, seamless messaging, and excellent iPhone integration. And for the cherry on top of it all, and this is my selfish reason for picking the Apple Watch Ultra this year, reviewing this device allowed me to go on a hike on the job, all in the name of real-world testing. Sure, I have since swapped out the Apple Watch Ultra for the Series 8 as my daily driver, but Apple has done enough to set its prosumer watch apart from its mainstream flagship. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter has breathed new life into a number of upstart social platforms. But no other service has benefited more than Mastodon, the once relatively obscure site that's long billed itself as a Twitter alternative. Ironically, Mastodon first became prominent back in 2017 after a backlash against Twitter's decision to remove user handles from character limits. Since then, the decentralized platform has had a small contingent of dedicated users, but was nowhere close to the social media mainstream. That all changed as soon as Musk's takeover began. Almost overnight, more than 30,000 new users flooded the platform, and the growth has only intensified since Musk formally took control of Twitter in October. As of November, Mastodon had more than 2 million users seeking a new home outside of Twitter. Yes, the platform is more complicated than Twitter, and not everyone is eager to start over on a new site. But it's impossible to ignore just how good Mastodon's timing has been. In the span of a few months, it's gone from niche to mainstream, and is now best poised to absorb the masses fleeing from Twitter. Speaking of, our biggest loser of the year award has to go to Twitter. Though it can be depressing to consider the worst developments in tech each year, naming some of the losers can actually bring some schadenfreude. In 2022, watching the long, overinflated crypto bubble burst was sort of like staring at a pimple pop in slow motion. It's oddly and grossly satisfying. And though some of us were sad to see Stadia go, no one in the tech and gaming industries was surprised when Google sent it to the graveyard. More frustrating though were the debacles that unfolded this year, with very real and dangerous repercussions for the most vulnerable communities. So, as we recap the worst things that happened in tech in 2022, let's hope that the year ahead brings some positive developments for us all. Even before Elon Musk got his hands on Twitter, the service was already being mishandled by its leaders. As soon as Musk floated the idea of a $44 billion takeover earlier this year, Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal and its board seemed to jump at the potential payday. And now we have Musk's Twitter, an increasingly toxic pit of the internet's worst, driven by the richest man in the world's id. advertisers are leaving in droves and Twitter obsessives are defecting to whatever alternative they can find. Meanwhile, Musk is learning just how difficult running a social network is, running polls willy-nilly to make decisions that usually take careful consideration and strategizing. At this point, we can only hope Twitter will go the way of Tumblr, mismanaged until it's sold at a fire sale price to someone who actually cares about the internet. 2022 saw the value of major cryptocurrencies fall by a significant margin, with billions of dollars being wiped off the industry in minutes. Major crypto companies saw that a winter was coming and started running layoffs too in the hope of staunching the flow. But that winter got turned into a blizzard when FTX collapsed, pulling the already downward trend even further south. The year also saw plenty of other crypto exchanges get hacked or burn up quite spectacularly when things got hairy. It was only then that the air started pouring out of Sam Bankman-Fried's bubble, and we're living through the consequences of that right now. FTX was bad enough that John Ray III, who was appointed the new CEO of FTX after its collapse, wrote in the Chapter 11 filing, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls," adding that the founders were inexperienced, unsophisticated, and potentially compromised. Next up, Google Stadia. Stadia didn't last long, but at times during its short life, it was amazing. During Cyberpunk 2077's unmitigated disaster of a launch, Google's cloud gaming platform was one of the best places to run the sprawling game with minimal problems. When many couldn't get the latest PlayStation or Xbox, Stadia was a way to play games with visual fidelity beyond the PS4 and Xbox One, as long as your internet connection could handle it. The problem, among many other issues, was that Stadia didn't have enough games to stay relevant. Exclusives were rare, and there simply weren't as many titles as the competition. Much of Stadia's catalog was also far more expensive to buy compared to other online game stores, even when on sale. A rumor started in late July 2022 that Stadia was going to be shuttered by the end of the summer. Now, it was never substantiated, but it was enough to send devoted Stadia gamers into freefall. Perhaps this was because Google has a reputation for killing its darlings, RIP Google Hangouts, Play Music, Cardboard, Reader, Wave, and more. Or perhaps because it was completely plausible. Google denied it for 2 months, and then the company announced it was shuttering the service, saying Stadia hasn't gained the traction with users that we expected, which was true. Google right now is mostly doing the right thing and reimbursing game and hardware purchases. But that doesn't include Stadia Pro subs, arguably what its most passionate supporters were using. Users will be able to play their game library until January 18th next year, and then the Stadia servers get turned off forever. After the Supreme Court's draft decision to overturn Roe v. Wade leaked, there was widespread panic. Amid disbelief and outrage, people began to question if the tools they were using to track or avoid pregnancy would be used against them. Chief among the concerns was the reliability of period and cycle tracking apps. Were they collecting data that could be used to identify people who had terminated pregnancies? Would they hand that information to anyone looking for it? The Dobbs decision had a ripple effect when we went from scrutinizing the privacy policies of all cycle tracking apps to realizing that the overall digital privacy of every user was on a tenuous foundation. We learned too that tracking tools used by companies like Facebook for personalized advertising could also be used for insidious purposes. Anti-abortion groups, for example, kept tabs on people seeking abortion services using Facebook's advertising tools, despite Meta's rules against doing so. Those groups could also share the data with third-party anti-abortion marketing companies to target, quote, abortion-minded people with ads. The outlook on our digital privacy in general may be bleak, but there could be some hope for improvement. With all the scrutiny this year, many popular period tracking apps took clear stands and launched privacy-focused modes, or made it clear that they would not collect user data. The FTC has also warned companies and data brokers against the misuse of health and location data and said that it was committed to using the full scope of its legal authorities to safeguard consumer privacy. We've all been cooped up at home long enough, and in 2022, we let the dogs and ourselves out. And as we all ventured outside, we stopped using the at-home gear that we bought to tide ourselves over the dark days of lockdown. Every time we came home to the sight of the expensive console or the exorbitant stationary bike that we no longer use, we were reminded of sadder times or unfulfilled goals. So while companies like Peloton and Bowflex saw a huge boost in sales during the lockdown, they quickly saw numbers stagnate or plummet in 2022. After an ambitious effort to manufacture its own equipment, this year, Peloton gave up making its own products and struck a deal to start selling its machines on Amazon. That marked the first time Peloton had sold its products on a platform other than its own, signaling that the company needed help to move units. Since then, it's also launched a partnership with sporting goods retailer Dick's to sell the bike, tread, and guide at 100 brick-and-mortar stores in the US. It also launched a rental program to let people get the bike for a monthly fee, and CEO Barry McCarthy said it was contemplating opening its workout content to competing bikes and treadmills. These efforts to reach a wider audience makes sense. Peloton posted a net loss of $757.1 million for the first 3 months of the year on a revenue of $964 million. The company tried drastic cost-cutting measures, effectively cutting its workforce in half in just a year. It also slashed the prices of existing models in an effort to lower the barrier to entry and draw in more customers. It's not all doom and gloom for Peloton though. The company did launch a new rowing machine and connected camera this year and appears to be setting its sights on more markets around the world. Everything about Toyota's bZ4X is disappointing. Not only did it come far too late, long after the company established itself as a hybrid leader and Tesla paved the way for true electric vehicles, it's also kind of ugly and surprisingly boring compared to other EVs, judging from practically every review. Oh, and it had to be completely recalled because the wheels would freaking fly off. Instead of being the product of a market leader in safety and reliability, the bZ4X made it seem like Toyota had never built a car before. Even its name didn't make sense. While Toyota has resumed production of the bZ4X, it's clear the company missed out on a huge opportunity with its first mass-market EV. There was a RAV4 EV once upon a time, but it doesn't exist now. It's doubly disappointing after we've learned that the company has been lobbying to slow down the EV transition. It's classic innovator's dilemma stuff. After pioneering with hybrids, why rock the boat any further? Toyota is reportedly pushing to reboot its sluggish EV plans, and given its sheer size, it'll likely catch up to other EV companies within the next decade. But the company's image is tarnished. It used to be the car maker that put its customers first, one that actually cared about the environment. But it turns out, even the good guys can get complacent. We hope you enjoyed watching this video of our recap of the best and worst in tech in 2022. Leave a comment telling us what you would add to our list. And for more coverage of the world of consumer technology, make sure you subscribe to Engadget.